Mark Rogers TV and Last Word on Sports, trying to get to every quarterback situation we possibly can get to by the time spring practice ends across the country. And we stop at UCLA with Tony Siracusa from Last Word on Sports to help us break down this UCLA quarterback situation. Tony, of course, thanks so much for joining us. I've got to say it's pretty clear cut here. Josh Rosen is the guy. There is no controversy here. There's no competition, especially when you consider the options below him on the depth chart at this point.
Yeah, that's true, Mark. Good to be with you again. Always appreciate the chance to talk college football with you. Yeah, look, UCLA, with Josh Rosen and UCLA this season, it's a matter of Josh Rosen staying upright the entire season. Jerry Neuheisel, the backup, left after his junior year. He graduated after 3 years at UCLA, is not going to go take a graduate senior season somewhere else. He's just done with football, done being the holder on the field goal attempts and so on. So there is no backup at UCLA with any significant game experience behind Rosen. They've done a decent job recruiting for the upcoming season and for next season, but there's no one with any viable big game experience behind Rosen. So the whole thing is going to be about protecting Rosen, which is also going to then require a significant change in the offensive scheme from what they had last year. Yeah, so that brings us to the really storyline here, because I think if Rosen gets hurt, that's the storyline. Who's going to play quarterback for UCLA? We've had a couple seniors here, and Mike Fafau and Jake Hall, who have thrown like a handful of passes in their career, as you note. Right. Now, if Rosen stays upright, it's obviously all on his shoulders, and the storyline becomes the offensive approach, which has changed possibly dramatically based on what you see coming up in 2016. Well, I think that they had, when Brett Hundley was there, the offense ran high speed, high trajectory. Hundley, of course, was always a threat to run, and it forced defenses to leave a linebacker in the middle to spy on Hundley, because he was a threat to take off and go up the middle and get 20, 25 yards per game. I mean, Hundley ran for over 1,700 yards in his 3 years at UCLA, not insignificant for a quarterback who was also throwing at a 60% clip. But they tried to run the same offense with Josh Rosen. Noel Mazzone, who was the offensive coordinator at UCLA for the last few years, installed the same kind of offense for Rosen that he had for Hundley. And the word on Hundley when he was coming into UCLA was that he ran the same kind of offense when he was in high school. And, if you know anything about Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas, is one of the elite programs in the country. But running that kind of offense against Reed High School of Sparks, Nevada, is dramatically different than Rosen trying to do it as a true freshman against Stanford or USC or Nebraska, that are very physical teams. And with UCLA finishing 8-5, and with the rushing stats from the quarterback position last year being just absolutely pathetic, it's a clear sign that the scheme did not work. You can't ask Rosen to sprint out with his lack of speed. I mean, the kid's great. He's got a cannon of an arm, but he's not what we would call fleet of foot. And asking him to sprint out to a corner and throw on the run just was a proven disaster. I mean, he had 3 interceptions against BYU, and 2 of them were trying to sprint out to the corner and throw on the run. It's just not his strong point. But Mazzone stuck to that all year, even as the fans in the Rose Bowl were grumbling and moaning throughout the season when they would see that offense. It's funny, Tony, you mentioned the pathetic rushing statistics for the UCLA quarterback position, and Josh Rosen made the one big dash to the end zone against Washington State that could have won the game before Luke Falk brought it all the way back against the Bruins at the Rose Bowl. That was a 37-yard touchdown run in which, again, Rosen made a great play, split the secondary, and showed a little bit of speed in that one. And that, I would say, would have to be the highlight of the season, rushing the football for Josh Rosen. I think you're being generous. I think you're being generous when you say he showed some speed up the middle. Recalling that game, it was a hole that you and I could have run through. Or that Wazoo secondary showed maybe it's not quite as athletic as it needs to be. I know before we came on, Tony, you mentioned a few peripheries that may help Josh this season in regards to pass protection, not necessarily offensive line, but also
despite losing some experience at wide receiver, they never really had that downfield threat, that deep threat to take advantage of his arm. And with some recruits, they might be in better position this fall.
Well, I think what you're going to see is a lot of, I think you're going to see a change. I mean, Jim Mora, it's just not in his DNA to admit he made a mistake and that the offense wasn't working. It's just not who he is. But I think you notice when Noel Mazzone was getting contract offered to take the offensive coordinator job at Texas A&M, there was not a great amount of groundswell to keep him at UCLA. It was a welcome departure because a change was needed. And so they brought in Kennedy Palomalu. Well, more promoted him from running back coach than brought him in. Brought over Marcus Tuiasosopo from USC as the quarterback coach. And I think you're going to see a significant difference. One of the things that happened last year with Rosen was he had 18 returning starters on the team. He had his entire offensive line returning. It was one of the most experienced offensive lines in the Pac-12. But they weren't good at the stunt protection, and they weren't good at the rollout protection. He had Paul Perkins, who is an outstanding running back. I've been watching the combines today, and he's doing a great job at the NFL combines in Indianapolis. But his biggest weak point was pass protection. And now you're asking this freshman to do all of these magical things that Brett Hundley did. To your point, I think that with these changes in the coaching staff, with a couple of changes in the offensive line, you're going to see more of a drop back offense this year. You're going to see more of a straight up pro style. It's not going to be a complete overhaul because Moore is not inclined to do that. But I do think you're going to see him drop back more, quick 3, 4, 5 steps, even out of the shotgun. You're going to probably see better pass protection because while Perkins is gone, they've got Soso Jamabo, who will be the starting running back, and he's a little bigger, a little more physical than Perkins was. And you're right. They got a big recruit in Theo Howard as wide receiver who's got great speed. They never had that downfield threat before, and Rosen has a cannon of an arm. You want people who can hit the fly pattern, hit the post pattern quickly, give Rosen a few seconds of pass protection, and let him sling it downfield.
And that is good news for college football fans like me who like to see some old school football, like to see a traditional pocket passer that can sling it downfield and really gun it downfield. I am so sick of seeing everyone run the same offense, basically a read option with some variations to it. So Rosen coming off 60% last year, 23 touchdowns, 11 picks. We could expect him to become even more efficient than those statistics right there for UCLA. Trying to bounce back from 8-5, higher expectations for the Bruins than that this past season and going forward. Tony Siracusa from Last Word on Sports, breaking down UCLA's quarterback situation. Tony, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Mark. Always good to be with you.